Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today I'm going to show you how to draft a pattern for a trapezoid shaped bag. We've got a big base at the bottom, the bag tapers up at the sides and it's smaller at the top. Now this has been doing my head in the entire week, and I've also had to ask for help from our Christine's Home Affairs Facebook group to see if there was anybody there that could help me. And thankfully there was, because I had made so many mistakes. So thank you to Sue for helping me along. It made all the difference in my measurements. You guys aren't going to have to worry about that though, because I'm going to show you how to work out how to do the angles on a bag like this. So we've got the wider base, narrow at the top. This one's going to be a huge one, but I've also done the bag in a smaller size. So today I'm going to show you how to draft a pattern for the two sizes that I've got here. I'm also going to show you how to create your own corner templates for these types of bags. And then in the next video, I'll show you how to put it together. When I draft patterns, I love to play with paper. Whether it be paper or some other kind of medium that I can draw on, it's been the best way for me to learn how to draft a pattern. This is the pattern for the small bag. This is the pattern for the larger bag. I'll show you how to draft both of those. It is actually really simple once you know how to do it, and we will also transfer our shapes onto some template plastic or cardboard. Come along and I'll show you how. So for now, what I need is a piece of paper that is larger than the piece of fabric that I want to work with. These pieces of fabric here are all pretty much the same size. So I'll set these aside. For the first pattern, my paper is 24 by 21 inches. I'll have all the metric conversions up on the screen as I go along. We have the fold along the bottom here. I'm going to fold this in half along here, and you want your pattern to be perfectly lined up on all sides. I folded my paper in half so that I've got 21 inches across this way, and this is now 12 inches. We've got a fold along the bottom here. Fold that into the center again, and you will have 10.5 inches by 12 inches. Open that out, and then we're going to take this fold at the bottom and bring that up, and we'll mark a crease in our paper there as well. At the moment we have our sheet of paper folded in half with 21 inches across here. As I said, this is 12 inches across here. That's our center marking there. It doesn't matter what size paper you're working with or what size fabric you're working with. This one is for my 21 by 24 inch piece of fabric. Before I do anything, I'm going to mark in my seam allowance on my paper. The seam allowance for this project is going to be 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. Very first thing I have to do is mark in my seam allowance, and I'll do that for both sides. We've got our folded edge along the bottom here. That will be the base of our bag. This will be the top of our bag where the zip goes. Now I've got the center marked along here at both ends, and from the center we're going to measure out 3 inches or 7.6 centimeters. And you'll make that mark on the stitching line, not on the outside edge. We now have 6 inches across the center here. So basically what's happening is that you'll have 1/4 of a measurement here, 1/4 of the measurement here, and you'll have half of the measurement in the center. And because I've got 6 inches here, the sides that I bring up on the side here need to equal 6 inches. And I'll be working on a 1/3 to 2/3 ratio. So if you divide 6 by 3, you're going to have 2 inches each. So one side will have 2 inches, the other side will have 4 inches. I want the top section to be longer, so I'm coming out 4 inches from the stitching line And I need a diagonal line from here down here that needs to also equal 6 inches. If I take my measuring gauge right at that 4-inch mark and come down to the other end, and I'll just make a few marks. I'll pivot this around, always keeping the end of the gauge on that 4-inch line. I'm going to keep on making some marks, just like you do when you're making a circle skirt or drawing with circles. And you'll do a few of those. On this end here, we're going to mark 2 inches, which is 1/3 of this distance. So you line up the 2-inch mark on your measuring gauge, but we're not coming straight out. We want to pivot this until we can meet up with one of these dotted lines that we've made. From here to here, we should have 6 inches. And that's the shape of the box corner that we want to have. I've made an allowance for my seam on the outside here. We also want to make an allowance for our seam in order to cut this out. So once again, I'm going to mark my 3/8 inch or 1 centimetre seam allowance on the inside of this shape. And it's the dotted line that we're going to cut out. The solid line will be our stitching line. So once you're happy with that, you can cut the shape out. Using your paper scissors, cut along the dotted line. And if we unfold this, there's our half pattern. And there is our full pattern based on the 21 by 24 inches of fabric. If I fold this in half again and we come back to just the half pattern, I'll mark in all of these measurements and then I'll know what this pattern is going to be for in the future. Okay, there are all the measurements that you need for the larger bag. On the left here we've got the inches as they are on the solid lines, which is our stitching line, and on the right here we've got the centimetres. In the middle I've got 12 plus 12 inches, which means that we have 12 inches on this side and another 12 inches on that side, and this is the fold of the fabric. The next size fabric that I want to work with is 14 by 18 inches. I folded this sheet in half and I'm going to now cut this down to the correct size. I'll line up a straight edge of my ruler along the fold in the paper at the bottom to get a straight cut. Flip that over to the other side. I'll line up the edge of the paper with a straight line on my cutting mat. I'm going to measure out 14 inches from this edge here. So I've got 14 inches across here, and I want the length of my sheet to be 18 inches. So this is folded in half. From the folded edge, I'll line that up again on the straight. And because this is folded, we only need half the measurement, which is 9 inches. So now we have a piece that's 14 by 18 inches. Let's fold that back in half and we'll work on this half. I folded that paper in half again, so we've got the top edge where the zip will be. This is the bottom fold, which will be the base of our bag and our side seams. Now this bag's going to be much smaller, so we don't want to have such a big boxed section. With the folded edge at the bottom once again and the open edge at the top, we'll mark in our centre. We once again need to mark in our seam allowance. This is the most important thing you can do, is mark in your seam allowance first. If you don't do that, your tapered corners aren't going to work or line up. And I have a few examples of fabric that I've started where that has happened. because the first template that I've made, I didn't make an allowance for the seams. With the centre position marked and our 9-inch sheet of paper across here, we want to divide that by 4. So I'm going to measure 2 1/4 inches or 5.6 centimetres from the centre. Once again, we're marking that on the seam line, and that distance should measure 4.5 inches across. So with that 4.5 inches here, we know that our diagonal line needs to be 4.5 inches, and working on that same 2/3 to 1/3 ratio, we've got to decide how long these sides are going to be. So 4.5 inches divided by 3 is 1.5 inches, which means our bottom line will be 1.5 inches, our top line 3 inches. So starting off with a straight edge across the paper, we'll mark 3 inches from the stitching line, and we want to measure 4.5 inches from here down to here. So we're going to pivot our measuring gauge around and make a few little marks. And from this point here, we're going to come up 1.5 inches, and we'll meet up with one of those marks we've made. I'll double check that works for me. And once again, I need to mark in my seam allowance. Now I've done a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance on a smaller bag. You might not want it to be that big. It's completely up to you what you want your seam allowances to be, but I'm happy with that. I'm going to mark that seam allowance or my cutting line in on the inside of that diagram I've drawn. There we go. And this is the cutout for the 18 by 14 inch bag. Let's cut this out. We'll fold this in half again. We can cut out along the dotted line. No, I accidentally cut the solid line. Lucky it's not my fabric. This is why I like to draft my patterns on paper first, so I can iron out all my little mistakes and teething problems. And I'll fix that with some adhesive tape on all of the layers. See, I would have cut all my fabric pieces the wrong size. Okay, there's all the measurements that you need for the 14 by 18 inch bag. The only measurements that are really important here are the measurements that you make along here. The width of your bag really doesn't matter, nor does the length of your bag. Where I've got 18 inches right across here, it's roughly equivalent to 46 centimetres, but it's not going to affect what happens around here. Likewise, 14 inches across here is almost 36 centimetres. Again, what happens in the middle here, length by width, doesn't affect any of the corners that you'll be cutting. So what we've done on the side across here, we have 2/3, 1/3, and whatever we've got here must be what we have here. Easy, right? It's only taken me 2 days to work this out. Now that we have both of our patterns drafted, I'm going to show you how to create a template so that you can use these sizes and other sizes on any size fabric that you might have. And the hard work has already been done. So this piece that we've already cut out on both the large and the smaller bags are what we're going to use to create our templates. I have some template plastic here. You can use cardboard or just a thick cardstock, and you can do one of two things. Well, actually 3, and I'll explain that in a moment. Your first option is to lay the cutout directly over your cardstock or your plastic and trace that out. And although we've already cut out our seam allowance, along the bottom you need to include that excess bit of fabric. And it pays to add your seam allowance to your template as well. So there's our first one that we can cut out, which I'll do in a moment. Your next option would be to use the cutout that you already have. And you could trace that out. And we'll do the same with the small one as well. This is our 24 by 21 inch bag. This one will be our 18 by 14 inch bag. And then you'll mark your measurements in here. You've got 6 inches, 2 inches, 4 and 6. So there are your finished template sizes, which is what you would use to cut out on your fabric. One thing that you do need to do on all of these is find the center. And that center is the mark that we've already made here. So you can just fold your template in half and mark a line straight across. So you would position this onto the center marking of your fabric, which I'll show you in the next video. That's with these designs that we've already made. What if you wanted to make a template in some random size? Well, we've already gained the confidence by drafting up these 2 patterns. Say we're making a miniature type of bag and it's only 3 inches across the base. Mark a solid line, then add your seam allowance. Mark a couple of lines that are 3 inches, and from this line out we're going to measure 2 inches, and out here we need to measure 1 inch. So we're just going to pivot the ruler around, make a few marks here. I'll do the same at this end, pivot that ruler until I find a mark that connects. From here to there I've got 1 inch, and from here to here I've got 3 inches. 3 inches, 2 inches, 1 inch and 3. And then all you need to do is cut them out. There you go. Once you've cut out your templates, label them, mark your measurements in there that are to be the finished measurements of the sides of your bags, and you've got templates to use instead of these patterns. So if we line up this template here with a cutout that we've made, that works perfectly, and we can just place that over the top of our fabric. Now remember that here we've got 4 inches marked on our paper. It's not going to measure 4 inches along here. It's only taking the measurement from the inside of our cutting line. So you don't want to be confused by that. So there we have it, a simple way to draft your pattern and then convert it into templates. So there wasn't really that much to it, was there? I was clearly overthinking it when I started this whole process earlier on in the week. There's our larger pattern, which is the bag that I'll be showing you in the next video, and then this smaller one as well. I have already made this up. You can have a look at it in the next video as well. And here are the little templates that have been created from drafting those patterns. So at the end of the day, it is actually very simple to make your patterns. And when you get your fabric, all you'll do, if you can see those lines on there, is fold your fabric in half the same way we did with our paper. Place your template over the top of it, trace it out, cut it out, then you can start sewing. I know that there are many patterns online that you can print out that will already have these patterns on printable PDFs for you, but I'm one of these people that needs to know how something works or why does something work, and the only way I can do that is by figuring it out. You're going to have to stick around until the next video, which I will upload tomorrow or the next day, and then you can come and see how we go about using these templates and these patterns to make those big bags that I showed you earlier. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.